So one thing that's really satisfying about working with leather is seeing how things work out. And it's a challenge because leather is, it's still a living, breathing animal. It molds differently, it works differently from hide to hide. Hi, I'm Zach Holyoak. Today we're going to show you how to do a rawhide standard binding. Today we're using about a 7 to an 8 ounce piece of rawhide. On preference, I would use a 6 or 7 ounce piece of rawhide for your binders. So beforehand, before you decide that you want to do a rawhide binder, what you want to do is you want to get the rawhide of your choice, and you're going to cut it down into strips. Beforehand, we've cut about a 4-inch by about a 28-inch piece of rawhide. We've taken those pieces that we've cut and we've let them soak in the sink for about 8 hours or more until they start getting pliable and you can work them around with your hands. After they've soaked in the sink for a while, you want to take these and you want to bag them up. And you want to bag them up tight. We don't want to lose any moisture. The more moisture you lose, the more this gets hardened up, and it's going to hurt when you're trying to bend them over these Cheyenne rolls. After you've bagged it up, you probably only want to leave it in there for about a day. If you leave it more than that, it's going to start getting moldy on you. So try to use it within that day time period after you've bagged it up. Be aware, the longer you have this out and you're not working with it, the faster it's going to dry out. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our straight edge here. We're going to lay it down on top of our rawhide, and then we'll take our stylus. After you got a line in that you can see, we're going to go ahead and we're going to straighten up this rawhide. Take my cutting board, I'm going to lay my rawhide down, and I'm going to cut right on the same line I just created with my stylus. Making sure you're being really careful and staying on that line. This rawhide, even though it's cased up and it's wet, it likes to move on you when you cut. I like to use kind of the middle of my knife. I feel like I have more control of using my head knife than just pushing through on a corner. It's still kind of a tough stuff to cut through. I've cut about a 4-inch by about 28-inch long piece of rawhide before I went in and started soaking it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the straight edge. Okay, I'm actually at this point, I'm going to take this piece of rawhide and I'm just going to set it aside. This little piece right here that I've cut off, this fat piece, I'm actually going to use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it to probably about 2.5 inches. What this is going to be kind of like a guide to show us how wide we should cut our rawhide. I'm going to take this and I'm going to go over to my standard binder and I'm going to use this as a gauge. I've already got my seat in and I've already got my crease in to preference. This little lip right here, we've cut to about 5/8 off the line. So I've got lines on both front and back. So what I'm going to do with this little piece of rawhide, I'm going to lay it on the front side in that crease, nice and tight. And I'm going to stick my thumb on it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and wrap that rawhide down around over the standard. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to see where my line comes in and I'm going to make a mark. And then right underneath that mark, just a little bit, I'm going to make one more mark. So after I've done that, I'm going to take it back to the table and cut it down to the right size. So after I made my marks in here, I'm going to take and on the very bottom mark, not the first mark you've made, but the last mark you made, we're going to cut straight across from here. And what that does is it takes this rawhide, and as you bend it over the standard part of it, it's going to fall just below that little bit of a line, and that's what we're looking for, is just a little bit of a lip right below your line. We're going to take our straight edge, and I'm going to line up one edge of this gauge that we've created with the straight edge, and I'm going to make a mark. Make sure you can see your mark. Now, with that mark being on there, I'm going to take my 8-inch wing dividers from C.S. Osborne, and I'm going to open them up until I touch that mark. So now I'm going to start from one end, and I'm going to drag those wing dividers all the way down. So now I'm going to take this, I'm going to just cut right on that line that we've created with our wing dividers. Make sure you're keeping your hands behind your blade every time you're cutting with your head knife. And And when you're working with rawhide, it's kind of hard to tell what side you should use. How I can tell when I'm working with this rawhide is if I feel right here, it doesn't feel glossy smooth. It's kind of rough. If I flip it over, now it feels kind of smooth. It's really hard to tell. This one, on this side, you can actually kind of see the veins are kind of prominent. So that would tell me that would be the rough outside of this rawhide. And that's what we're going to want down onto our cantle. I'm going to set my extra aside. So I'm going to take this piece that I've cut and I'm going to flip it over. Now I'm going to take my CS Osborne stitch groover. They're set to about 1/4 inch wide. And I'm going to stitch groove both the long sides and just the long sides. After you've got both of the long sides stitch groove, now we're going to go ahead and edge. I'm going to take my number 1 edger from horseshoe. I'm going to start in one corner. I'm going to work my way all the way across. Try to keep this as flat as you can. You don't want it to wrinkle up on you and cut more off than what you want. We're just going to edge the long sides of the rawhide. Now we've got our rawhide edged. Now we're going to move over to our standard on our saddle. So now we moved over our saddle. On here, we're going to do a little bit of prep work that we didn't get done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my number 3 edger from horseshoe. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to edge these 2 edges right here. When I edge, I like to always start in the middle. So I'm just going to take and edge these down all the way from corner to corner. And what this does is it'll give your cantle binding a more rolled effect instead of a squared effect. Okay, so now I've done the back side, now I'm going to do the front side. Now since that's done, we're going to go ahead and start putting on our cantle binding. So now we're going to move over to our saddle. We're going to go ahead, we're going to unscrew these ears. I like to screw them down after I get the seat in because it helps keep those ears in place. So after I've got the ears unscrewed, I'm going to take and I'm going to fold them towards the front of the saddle. So now since we've got our ears kind of pulled forward, we're going to go ahead and start placing our cantle binding on here. So I'm going to grab my cantle binding. I'm going to take and I'm going to kind of make a fold in it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of lay that back side down underneath. I'm going to tuck it under there and I'm going to roll the front side up so it's really nice and tight in with that ear cut. All right, I'm going to place a screw just below that ear cut. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cantle binding and I'm going to stretch it back across. So I'm going to come on this side and I'm going to take that cantle binding. I'm going to lay it over my fingers. I'm going to grab a hold of it, or I'm just going to pull it right across. And the same deal. I'm going to tuck it really nice, tight into that cut in the ear, and then I'm going to place a screw. So after the screws are in place, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my shoe hammer. I'm just going to start kind of tucking it down around the back side of this on both sides. So now we've had it all stretched across. We're going to go ahead and start kind of forming it in to that line. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing or pulling it away to the line we've created in the front of our seat, even though it's folding out on us. I want to kind of get it in the general general area. It's going to help centralize that rawhide on your binding. Okay? So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take and kind of hold it so it stays on that line. I'm going to kind of pinch it and hit it back under. I'm going to do this on both sides. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the front. I'm just going to make sure everything, as I push it down, is going to line up with that line. And this looks pretty square to me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my number 5 stitch marker from Horseshoe and I'm going to stitch mark the back and then I'm going to move to the front. I always like to start in the middle when I stitch mark anything. So I'm going to stitch mark all the way down to this corner and then back across the other side. Okay, so we got the back stitch mark. Now we're going to move to the front and stitch mark that. Now since we're all stitch marked, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start stabbing this. You can kind of tell that this rawhide on the front and back is starting to fold a little bit on me. That's fine. I'll show you how to remedy that as we're stabbing and stitching this. So now we have our binder on. It's all stitch marked. I've got a little trick I'd like to show you guys when I go to sew and stab standard bindings. So one thing I like to do when I sew standards, I like to come from the back and I like to pre-stab my hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the middle and I can fill in the front end. If I bend this rawhide down and touch, I can fill it in that crease. So what I like to do is I like to come back and I like to just barely poke through the rawhide. And I start in the middle and I work my way to the corner. What I'm doing here with my awl, I'm really watching how my awl goes in. These awls from Douglas, they have a long side and a short side. And what I'm trying to do is keep the long sides with the edges of my stitch groove, so they look really square on the stitch groove. I'm going to stab this just enough through the back side from corner to corner. So now we've got all our holes punched in the back. And these holes are actually going to help us out as we're stabbing through. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this rawhide over and I'm going to kind of, since it's flaring out on me, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pinch it together. I'm going to feel and make sure this is still on its line, and I'm going to feel and make sure this is still on its line. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to start about middle of the saddle again, and I'm going to stab through my binding. And what I'm trying to do is stab right through the hole I punched. So you can see here, I've stabbed right through the hole I've just barely punched. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to stab on this away from that center hole twice. So the reason why I do this is because I'm going to start in the middle sewing and I'm going to work my way out. And what this does is it locks in the stitches. So say I'm going to work I like to work to me first. If I sew to, it's going to lock in these stitches over here so it doesn't flare up as I'm sewing and move on that side. So it locks those stitches in, and now I can sew the rest of the way this way and then come back and go this way. We're going to stitch part of this right now. And then after we stitch all these holes, we're going to stab some and stitch as we go. So from here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab some thread and we're going to come back and start stitching some of these holes. So now we're back to our table. We're going to grab some thread. We're using some 415 nylon thread today, and we're going to take about 5.5 arm lengths of this. So I'm going to take an end and I'm going to put it right at the edge of my palm of my hand, and I'm going to stretch out 5.5 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what I do to consider a half is I take my left hand and I stretch out and I go right to here, about center of my chest. And that's where I'm going to cut. All right, so now we're going to move back to our saddle. We'll make sure on our trip we're going to take our hook awl. All our hook awl is an old Lannis needle. What they've done is they've doled down the tip and cut out the notch where you thread your machine, and it gave it a hook. So as we go through, we can grab our loop that we're going to create and pull it through. All right, so now what we're going to do, since we're back to the saddle, we're going to stab through the center hole. We've stabbed 5 holes in the front. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to grab our string and we're going to hook it and we're going to pull it through. We're not going to pull all the way through. We're going to keep this loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this loop. I'm going to just set it over my horn for the time being. So now after I've found the 2 loose ends, I'm going to match them up. I'm going to unloop this from the horn and I'm going to grab center of the loop. And I'm going to match them up with these 2 loose ends. And I'm just going to pull through and make sure these look even. So as I find, and they're even out, I'm going to find center of our cantle. So I got 2 strings on front, 2 strings on the back, and these are still even in my hand. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to cut that loop right in half. Okay, and I'm just going to drop them. I'm going to take the front 2 now, and I'm going to throw them over the saddle away from me. We're in the middle hole, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go next to the middle hole away from me, and I'm going to take the string that's closest to that hole and I'm going to build a loop. And I'm going to pull it through the top. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of gently pull. On this loop you have a working string and a non-working string. This one has tension. This one will just freely move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that non-working string and I'm going to pull and I'm going to watch. And on this front end, one string's going to move. And the string that moves is the one I don't want. I'm going to grab the other one that does not move and bring it through my loop. And then I'm going to take my back string on that loop and I'm just going to pull it tight. Now I'm going to go to the hole from middle to me and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hook that string that's closest to the hook. I'm going to pull it through and you can already know which string's going to go through it. And I'm going to grab that one and pull it through. And what I've done with that is I've actually created an X right here in the middle. It's within the leather, but I've created an X with the strings. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab both these strings, I'm going to wrap it around my hand and on the back, and I'm going to take both these strings on the front and wrap it around my hand. And my front strings, I'm going to pull them taut. I'm going to take my back strings and I'm just going to gently pull away from me. If you pull too hard, you'll see the loops on the back side like this here. So I'm just going to pull back with my right hand in. So what that's done is set those strings at the same time. I'm going to go to the next hole away from me and build a stitch. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to set this stitch in. I'm going to take both those strings and I'm going to just throw them away from me. Now, preference for me is I like to sew to me. So now I'm going to go and start sewing to me. I'm going to build my loop. I'm going to take my top string through the loop. I'm going to wrap them and even pressure pull away from each other and then set my stitch. Don't pull too hard. We're trying to set them in the middle. You'll feel the different layers. There's 4 different layers we're going for. As you're pulling through, you can feel them pop. So on the second pop, stop. So now I've stitched all my holes that I've punched. So now I'm going to pick up my awl and I'm going to start punching a little bit more and then sew and then punch a little bit more and sew. And the reason why I'm doing that is this rawhide's not wanting to sit flat. So the more I sew and I can adjust, coming and touching that front line. I've ran into a little bit of a problem though that I've watched. This, how it started out from the middle, my awl's sitting kind of on an angle to me. So what I want to do is I want to try and straighten those punches out straight with the saddle. So here's a little trick to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to punch my next hole. And I'm going to come out in the same hole. You can see how that awl's angled. Okay? So I'm going to take that same hole I punched in the front, I'm going to pull my awl out, not all the way out, just a little bit, and I'm going to tilt it, and I'm going to come out that other hole. Now my awl's more straight with the saddle. I've punched 2 holes in the front and out the same hole in the back. And this is what we call grabbing a stitch. So I'm going to go to the front hole. I'm going to go to the hole that's angled that we need to correct. I'm going to pull through and build a stitch. Now I'm going to go back through the same front hole to that other hole that's going to straighten us out, and I'm going to grab a stitch again and pull it through. Now what that's done is it's taken this angle that's going to get us in trouble when we get down here. It's going to be too far up, and we've straightened it out now. So when we get down to the bottom, we're going to be even and we can hit all the holes. So now after that's fixed, we're going to just keep going, and we're going to stab a little while, and then we're going to sew a little bit what we've stabbed, and then repeat the process. And as you're doing it, you'll find that your rawhide's moving. So what I'm doing before I stab is I'm making sure with my thumb I'm grabbing the lip of that rawhide and pushing it up a little bit so it goes to that crease we've created in the front. And that's kind of the reason why I stab and then sew a little bit, so I can keep everything in line. So just a reminder, when you're stabbing through here, what we're trying to do is keep your angle with your awl. And what I'm talking about there is your awls are diamond shaped. And what we're trying to do is keep the long sides of your awls, when you punch those holes, the edges of your stitch groove. So keep in mind of how you're placing your awl. Something might help you out, especially when you're a beginner and trying to do this, is how to keep your angle. And what I mean by that is you want to, when you find your angle, as I come out and poke through this hole, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to grab my awl how I want it. I'm lock my wrist, my elbow, and my shoulder, and I'm going to kind of tuck in close and pull it straight out. So what this does is it's going to keep everything locked. So when you go to that next hole and you go to stab through, it's going to help you stay right where you need to be and come out that hole. It's almost like you got to keep kind of like a little T-Rex arm, kind of close and a little short. It's going to help you stay in line so you don't overstab or understab these holes, because the point of it is to come right out on that hole. Something to watch out for when you're sewing with your hook awl is to make sure you're set in your hook with your thread. Sometimes if you're going too fast or not paying attention, you can hook just a little bit of that thread, and when you pull it through, it's going to bunch up on you in the back, and then you've got to try to straighten it out or cut your thread a little ways and restitch. So make sure you're taking your time and setting that thread in that hook nice and tight. I like to hook and pull away from the hook, so when I pull through, it keeps it in there. All right, so now we're ending up down at the last couple of stitches on our other side. So what I've done is I got one punch in the front, I stabbed and caught the one in the back, and then I pulled out just a little bit again and I punched down to catch that last hole. You don't want any of your punches in the back to fall short, then it looks unfinished. So now I've got that top hole. I'm going to stab kind of straight down, catch that bottom hole now, and now I'm going to pull tight. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did in the other corner. I'm going to find my working string and my non-working string. So now I'm going to take that non-working string and take that top string and wrap it around twice. Take my back string, and it's going to build that little knot right there. I'm going to pull until it's set in there, until I can feel it click. So now that finishes up the sewing part of it. Now we can go ahead and burn these threads off, tuck our ears up a little bit, and that'll conclude our lesson today. So I'm going to take and I'm going to hit this rawhide in underneath these corners. I want these to be nice and flush and tight. So now to finish those off, we've got a little overhang you can see here. So I'm going to take my number 3 edger that I used earlier, and I'm going to do, wow, okay. So this rawhide's not cutting very good, so I grabbed my number 8 Ron's French edger, and I'm just trying to get me a cut going here. Then I'll take my number 3, and I'll just take and push it up through there, back up towards that screw. Okay, so now we've got this extra cut off. Now we can take and push that, and take our heel pry tool, and just kind of push it back in place. See how it's kind of fitting really nice and tight? That's what we're looking for. So now we'll take and we'll do it on the other side. Go ahead and start the cut with the French edger. I'm actually just going to take the French edger from here, and I'm just going to roll it around right in front of that screw. I got a little bit of a tail you can see right there. I'm going to take and kind of knock that down and off. Those will cause lumps underneath your ears. Make sure when you're setting your ears back, these sit really nice and tight up against your binder. You don't want a lot of gaps. We want them really nice and tight. For more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel.
You can watch the full course by subscribing to illumeatelier.com, the learning platform for leathercraft with instruction from the best artisans in the leather industry. Invest in your craft and subscribe today for $50 per month.